Bill. How are you doing
Conn,
today?
How are you?
We're actually just barely sitting across from each other in a lounge on the fourth floor of the Alliance Center in downtown Denver at the convention on Thursday before Barack Obama's speech.
And this building is adjacent to what is known as the Big Tent, the first of its kind at a political convention, put together by a number of the progressive groups that work out of this building and the folks at Daily Co's. And that has been the center of most of the blogging activity here, and in an upstairs area at the Big Tent, a series of panel discussions has been going on. We can talk more about that a little bit as far as what this means in terms of bloggers for the broader progressive movement. But what topic did you want to start off with?
Well, I'm one of the few conservatives here. They had 3,000 applications for credentials. The security is pretty tight here as far as getting in. They have to have a lanyard pass. This is one of them.
This is the Big Tent.
This is the Big Tent. The Big Tent. Not allowed in the convention, but in order to get into the Big Tent, you have to have a pass. This is my all 4-day pass. But the amenities here are just great. They've taken great care of me. They've been very open and friendly. Google is sponsoring two items right in the entranceway. They have free smoothies pretty much from 9 o'clock until they close up around 5. They have 4 different flavors, one for each color of the Google logo. Then there's also free massages.
I didn't catch that.
What?
I didn't catch that.
Oh yeah, no.
Google logo.
Yeah, you got the blue, the red, the green, and the yellow.
I was just enjoying the limeade.
I like pineapple mango, the yellow one.
It's a little fruity for a conservative.
Well, I think once you're having a smoothie, you're already down that fruity road. But then there's also massages right there, massage chairs, very nice. I like to go mine about 1 or 2 when the lunch hour rush hits. But that's another thing. They have free lunch and dinner every day. And if you get here early enough, like I do, the staff also generally encourages you to go down and share in their breakfast. So I'm getting 3 squares a day here in Denver.
Did you mention the massages already?
What?
Did you mention the massages?
I did. Well, I mentioned the Google massages, but there's also a Huffington Post Oasis, which teaches you yoga and also has table massages. So
how many massages have you gotten at the Democratic National Convention?
3. 3 so far.
For the record, that is 3 for Conn and 0 for me.
And I'll probably have a 4th before I go home today. I like to be relaxed. But yes, so on top of the free smoothies and free food and free massages, generally starting around 1:30, there's free beer as well. The New Belgium Brewery.
Which is a green brewery.
A green brewery, employee-owned.
I know you don't seem to believe that clean energy can power anything, but it does seem to power the New Belgium Brewery.
I don't think it can power anything, just can't power everything. But anyways, they make a great wheat beer, which I've enjoyed pretty much every day. So I'm sorry you guys missed out this year, but if you have to choose to go to a convention and a blogger, I would definitely consider going to the Democrat one because the amenities are much nicer.
So you were not expecting this level of service at the Republican convention in St. Paul next week?
Well, there's no comparable
massage
event planned, right? I mean, the DNC also has their own, kind of online media centers, and so will the RNC. But this has nothing to do with the DNC. This is run by
the conservative movement is not doing any kind of unofficial activity outside the hall.
Exactly. This is a 501c3 Progress Action Now, right?
I think that's right.
So it's a 501c3, so it's nonpartisan. Bobby Clark, who runs it, has done a very good job. I've seen him. He's making sure that there's no Obama labeled stuff being passed out here. So you can get like NARAL T-shirts and SEIU T-shirts, but they're very good at keeping nonpartisan. No, directly Obama Biden stuff being handed out. And it's an online group that put up this tent for kind of new media. And no, there's no other directly conservative online group that's putting on something as big as this. Definitely something that's Google is helping to co-sponsor. So my gravy train of free food, free smoothies, and massages will end when I leave Denver and head to Minnesota.
Well, this segues into what I think is, in many ways, some of the biggest unreported news of this convention, the fact that there is so much unofficial liberal progressive activity outside the hall. I blogged the 2004 convention. We were the first bloggers ever to blog a convention. There were about 35 of us. They had us up in the nosebleed seats, a little bit of Wi-Fi in the hall. You went to some of the caucus meetings maybe during the day. My group now, Campaign for America's Future, I wasn't with them back then, but they did a Take Back America event. That was pretty much the only major unofficial activity that I can recall. I mean, there's some other things I wasn't aware of, but certainly now there is a explosion of activity. The Big Tent is just a part of it. I went to a great foreign policy discussion that Steve Clemens at the Washington Note and New America Foundation put together. There's a STARS Media Center where there were other panel discussions there. So there's a great sense of a lot of issue-based activity going on, and this is a series that we did at the ourfuture.org site. How do we seize this progressive moment? How do we mobilize around these issues now so we can hit the ground running in January 2009 in a way that didn't really happen in 1992 when there was some promise of passing big legislation that got snuffed out pretty quickly.
Yeah, no. There's the names that you see coming through the Action Now tent are pretty big. Paul Krugman's been over here a couple times. T. Boone Pickens was here yesterday.
I did interviews with Senator Salazar, Governor Gregoire of Washington, Ariana. I got to talk to you briefly.
Ariana's been here, a couple times.
So I mean, there's big names coming through, and of course hundreds and hundreds of bloggers. So there is, it's a further confirmation that there is a movement. There is a movement. There is a progressive movement that has grown very quickly. I talked to Peter Dow when I was writing my book several years ago, and Peter Dow, who's now Senator Clinton's main internet outreach director, and he had said to me, the conservative movement, it took it from the Goldwater defeat of '64 until the election of Reagan as president in 1980 for the conservative movement to really become an influential power. And he had predicted that because of internet tools, you could build a movement much faster. You can share information faster. You can organize people online nationwide instantaneously. They're tools. You got to use the tools well. It doesn't happen magically, but the ability is there, and I think there's some evidence of that succeeding now. Not to say that the progressive movement is matching the conservative movement in strength just yet, but I think this 4-year period has been very fruitful.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest examples we'll see that is a president that's been here a number of times. She just finished hosting a panel now, and she's been a guest on a number of other panels, and that's Rachel Maddow, who, of course, 2 weeks ago, last week, and it was announced that she would be having her own show following Keith Olbermann. So, she's definitely someone of this movement, very comfortable here, very looked up to here, and I think you definitely have to have, say that MSNBC has become, part of that movement. And, of course, there's been...
that's a little broad. I wouldn't take it that far. I don't know if Joe Scarborough sees himself as part of the progressive movement. He's got a lot of airtime, 6 to 9 every morning.
Well, we'll see how long he lasts at MSNBC, because one of the great subplots of this convention is all the news that's being generated on the set of MSNBC. Newsbusters has been on top of this. Page 6 too, the Politico had a big story today, and basically just the tensions between the personalities on screen, namely Keith Olbermann, who never really got along with Chris Matthews, and Joe Scarborough, who doesn't get along with David Schuster at all, doesn't get along with Keith. I think he likes Rachel Maddow fine. Bill disagrees.
They had a couple of moments on TV that I found awkward, but I had a chance to talk to Willie Geist from Morning Joe,
right?
Which I taped the interview, and I asked him point blank about that, and Willie Geist insisted that Joe and Rachel get along quite well.
Well, Joe and Mika have their moments that are kind of awkward on TV,
there's
and
more,
they
there's more
get
like
along
a
great.
playful, almost sibling relationship there because they're on air day in day out.
I think Rachel and Joe get along. However, they're in the minority now because Joe definitely does not get along with David Schuster at all. We'll link to the Newsbusters video, but Huffington Post and Wonkette have also been posting the video. But
no, I don't understand here. Now,
yeah.
Newsbusters is part of the Media Research Center or Accuracy Media.
Yeah, MRC.
MRC, which is one of the bigger parts of the conservative movement. I obviously the right is interested in painting MSNBC as a liberal network.
Right, MSDNC.
Right, of course. It's not the Clinton News Network anymore.
No.
CNN was in the tank all throughout the 90s. You know, I don't think you saw anything about Monica Lewinsky on CNN in the 90s. It was just a total whitewash. But so now MSNBC is the target of choice. There's got to be some sense of victimhood and persecution to keep the conservative movement going, I assume. But why is it that Newsbusters is focusing on tension between Joe Scarborough and these folks? Because that only really seems to shine a spotlight on the fact that Joe Scarborough is there, and he is a conservative who it controls, you know, the morning 3 hours, which is not an insubstantial slot to have. You know, the prime time with Keith and Rachel definitely, you know, you back-to-back liberal shows. Chris Matthews, I wouldn't peg very cleanly in any kind of ideological hole.
Oh, come on. He said on camera he's weak in the knees for Obama.
You get to throw up his leg, but you believe me, you can find many examples when Chris Matthews has not been a friend to Democrats and liberals.
But it gets back to your original point. I mean, the blow up with Schuster and Scarborough was when Schuster was talking about your party in reference to policy in Iraq, and Scarborough shot back and said, "Well, what about your party, David?" And David said, "Oh, no, I'm an independent." And then Scarborough went off about how, "Oh, I'm sure everyone here at MSNBC is independent. I'm sure you have to register." So basically, he's just calling into question the whole idea that MSNBC, was MSDNC, and that David Schuster is just like Keith and Rachel are hardcore partisans. So I think what kind of set him off was that Schuster was taking an air of detached superiority that he found offensive. That something that Rachel would not, because Rachel just openly is liberal progressive. And so I think Joe's main problem is that there's too many other people, reporters at MSNBC, like David Schuster, who are trying to play this dishonest game of saying they're not what they are. So that was just one of the blowups of the week. The others have been to stay with the GOP frame, but we'll get. Because there's also the whole problem with Howard Wolfson. But MSNBC also recently signed Mike Murphy, of course, is a GOP strategist, and
NBC did.
MSNBC did.
Does Mike Murphy know that he's now working for the Democratic National Committee?
He does. But what has been interesting watching it is Keith Olbermann has said on a number of occasions, something, I forget the exact quote, but it's something like, shut him up or shut his mic off or get him off the air. Basically, and Keith refuses to have him on his show, a Countdown. Now he's on at other times, and Keith, barely tolerates him at all. So it's very openly the abusive atmosphere for anybody who comes on with pro conservative views, like Mike Murphy.
Well, Keith, I think it's pretty. I don't think he ever has a conservative on.
Okay, there you go.
I have a hard time thinking of one that he has had on. He doesn't tend to have. I don't think he wants this to be a crossfire type show. And it's not like it's hard to find conservative voices in every other hour of television. But see,
that's just the problem. That's the problem that MSNBC is facing, is because they want to be both, the destination for liberal progressive news, and to have Keith have his own show. But Keith was covering all the post-debate coverage. They put Keith in a lot of news slots, and so when they put Keith into those news slots, after they have a debate this fall. You're going to want to have a conservative and a liberal reaction to what happened during debates. And Keith is going to be completely incapable of doing that.
That's not true. When Keith anchors live events like debates and the like, he doesn't have the same policy towards guests that he has when he's doing Countdown.
Right. Instead, he tells Mike Murphy to shut up.
There's a lot of opinionated news out there, and I don't think, like you're saying about
that's
Rachel.
exactly what we're running into, is that when they put Keith into that news role, he can't shut the opinion off.
90% of the time when Keith is anchoring live events, he plays things pretty straight.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you there.
Not that if he's not playing, I don't really care. It's like, have you stopped watching Fox News because they don't play anything straight? Of course not.
I never started watching Fox News.
You don't watch Fox News at all?
No. But never did.
And no one at Heritage Foundation watches Fox News.
Well, I didn't say that. I can't be responsible for doing having
Is Newsbusters complaining about the bias of coverage of Fox News ever?
No, but Chris, you don't see Chris Wallace telling Juan Williams and Maura Liasson to shut up. They're civil. Keith's not. It's as simple as that.
I mean, Keith. I mean,
right.
As far as MSNBC cares, I presume, is they want to make money and have ratings. And
no, but there's a third one. Is that not MSNBC, but MSNBC has a, is it centuries old? A very long established good brand of news, and Meet the Press is part of that.
But it's NBC News, not MSNBC.
There's a little bit of brand blurring there.
Well, I mean, and there's definitely some tension there because I think the NBC people
there is
don't like
there.
MSNBC being seen as being more liberal.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is MSNBC has had awful ratings forever. And the first big rating success that they had, not counting Phil Donahue, of course, who was their top-rated person before the Iraq War began, Keith Olbermann's a bona fide commercial success for the network. And the interesting thing about Rachel Maddow coming on, there clearly was an institutional resistance to have two identifiable liberals be back-to-back on primetime for fear...
That's 100% true. You're right.
For fear that they would be tagged as a liberal network, and that would diminish their brand as a news outlet.
Do you disagree that that's a concern at all? I mean, do you think that's a completely illegitimate concern?
It's not an illegitimate concern, but it does need to be brought into some larger context because there's two things you got to think about here. Number one, media has gotten very fractured. Everyone's playing to niches right now. The reason why Fox News is successful is that they are a conservative network.
Not everyone. A lot of people are.
I'm sorry?
Not everyone. A lot of people are. More and more people are. But some people, are still trying to maintain a broad-based appeal, a place where everyone can come together.
But I would argue that even a CNN or a New York Times or a Washington Post, which present themselves as being straight news outlets, are effectively playing in niches. There's a niche of people that want that kind of coverage at this point. There's no singular news outlet that is serving a broad mass of people.
But is that a niche that people from divergent views can come to and feel like it's a fair forum where they can discuss and have advanced ideas? Because that's the institution that that NBC now has in Meet the Press, and they value that. They value the fact that people come on, newsmakers come on from both sides and make news on their show.
Well,
the politicization of MSNBC directly threatens that flagship.
I understand that MSNBC would have a concern that perhaps that would be threatened, but what I think you've seen is they recognize that when you look at MSNBC's ratings, Chris Matthews has middling ratings. It spikes up with Keith, and then it dropped back down to Chris Matthews levels when Dan Abrams came on.
No one's disagreeing that Keith's a runaway success.
So you finally had a recognition that you need to have something on after Keith that was going to hold his audience and perhaps even build on it. And the thing about Rachel is, and this is why I think so many liberals are very excited that Rachel's star has risen so. It's not just, I think it's somewhat of a blogosphere success story because I think her success is part because on the blogosphere people would spread enthusiasm about her. But it's also an Air America success story. Air America has just been the whipping post for the right for so long and certainly has had its problems. But she's a homegrown Air America star. And if you ever listen to Rachel Maddow, and I'm sure you're a fan.
Actually, I don't. I don't even know what station she's on.
So you've never heard a radio show?
I've never heard a radio show.
Okay.
That's true.
You've seen her on MSNBC.
I have seen lots of her. I'm a big MSNBC fan.
And have you seen her sub in for Keith?
I have.
Okay. What's interesting about her is that she is a good news person. She is a good anchor. She does not, and I'm a fan of Keith, but Keith obviously puts more of his personality into the show than I think Rachel does. And so what you're probably going to get out of Rachel's show is a lot of good information. I don't think you're going to get. I don't think Rachel's show is going to feel like a blast of propaganda from start to finish.
Is that what Keith's feels like?
I don't think so. But I understand why someone might take it that way at times. I think plays a little closer to the line, and that's not a line that I think Rachel wants to go near. So you might get a situation where people might feel, you know what, I know where Rachel comes from ideologically, but I'm still getting good information out of this show. I'm still getting a good discussion. I'm getting information analysis that I'm not getting anywhere else. And there still is Chris Matthews, who's going to have plenty of conservatives on his show. There's still Joe Scarborough, who is an actual conservative himself. So I don't think you're going to get an impression that MSNBC is a completely inhospitable terrain for conservative viewpoints. And you might even be able to show that you can have a liberal prime time that is commercially successful and doesn't harm your brand as offering good journalism. That's the potential of Rachel Maddow, and we'll see how it bears out. I can understand why MSNBC would be a little concerned about it, but obviously they saw Rachel operate on their network for so long that I think they achieved a certain comfort level that she would work both commercially and be good for their overarching journalistic brand.
Yeah, or it's just that Keith wanted it badly enough and pressured them long enough, and they finally gave in.
I highly, highly doubt. I think Keith has a certain amount of leverage because he is a successful person on the network, but I don't think he can snap his fingers and make MSNBC do whatever it is they want.
It didn't snap. It took a while. He fought head to toe with the muckety mucks there for months, but he eventually got his way. It wasn't a snap into the fingers.
I don't think that in any way Rachel's hire is not based completely 100% on her merits.
Yeah, she doesn't get that job if it's not for Keith. No way. No how.
Well, we have a bet.
We do have a bet.
We made yesterday.
We do.
I say within 1 year, after at the 1 year point,
from when the show kicks off. So not today, but from when the show kicks off.
So by September 8th, 2009, I believe Rachel Maddow's show will have better ratings than Keith's show.
Yes, I'm taking that bet. $10, even odds.
And it's not to disrespect Keith in any way. I just think that Rachel's going to hold on to Keith's audience and attract others who may be a little, turned off by Keith's personality. I know other liberals who do not like Keith's show because they think it's a little bit too much. And I think Rachel is going to appeal to a broader segment of both people within the liberal community and other people who are more independent who just want to get, another take of news from an intelligent person.
Very true. But we'll move away from MSNBC for now and go back to kind of what we're feeling here at the convention. And one of the reasons I was really excited to come here was to find out, what really were the policy expectations that the progressive community had from a Democratic House, Senate, and President Obama. So I've got my notes as to what I think the big three priorities are. But Bill, what would be what would you like to see Barack Obama do number one? And then expand that out to maybe two others. What are the top three issues you would want? CAF wants.
Campaign for America's Future is. I would put it this way. I think if you ask most people, CAF has not enumerated this, so it's not an official declaration from CAF.
So you're personally
right. I think generally speaking, healthcare for all, clean energy economy, fair trade, investment in infrastructure, ending the occupation of Iraq. That's the big five as far as there's things to protect like Social Security. As far as what are the big pieces of bold legislation we'd like to get passed? I think we want to get a health care plan that's going to guarantee quality affordable coverage for everybody. We want to get that Apollo Alliance clean energy plan going, $30 billion a year for 10 years, and creating green collar jobs. Revamping our trade strategy. That's not something you do. That's not really a first 100 days type of thing. It's more of a long-term thing. Investing in infrastructure in a serious way. Clean energy is a part of that. And getting out of Iraq and recalibrating our foreign policy. Now, when you ask, and so part of what we've been doing at CAF on our site, we've had this creative the Progressive Moments series, is trying to get that mobilization around those issues happening now, so you can hit the ground running in January 2009. Interesting is, and my friend Charlie Blandy, who blogs at bluemassgroup.com, he had picked up my post about how we missed the Clinton moment, and in my state of Massachusetts missed the Governor Deval Patrick moment, who ran a similar campaign to Obama, but coasted. I mean, he wanted a 21-point victory, ended 16 years of Republican rule in the governor's mansion in Massachusetts, but was not able to hit the ground running. Did not take big, bold, progressive legislation as part of a first 100 days plan, and lost a little bit of steam. Now, and so Charlie Blandy had noted, I really want to see Barack Obama say that the top three things are going to be healthcare, clean energy, and Iraq. And so a commenter on his post said, in fact, when Barack is asked that question, that's exactly what he says. he says those three things: healthcare, energy, Iraq. So there is a real window of opportunity here. But as I think we've seen with the coastal drilling debate, just having the numbers in Congress does not automatically make this legislation happen. There has to be a political climate, a framing of debate, sharp arguments, honed messages that create a political space for big legislation to happen, and that didn't happen from the left. Newt Gingrich was able to dominate the space and recalibrate the framing. And it's a lesson to learn, and learn quickly, because this moment is potentially upon us very soon.
I would kind of take away two of those issues and add one in. I haven't seen a lot on Iraq at all, really. I think it's largely faded from the foreground.
Well, why is that?
Well, it's because the Maliki government and the current U.S. government have basically agreed on a timeline for getting most U.S. troops out of the country. So it's kind of faded from the distance. And also, I was at a panel with MoveOn.org's executive director Eli, and he was saying, or not he was saying, but a audience member asked him what MoveOn's position was on Afghanistan, and Eli says that his membership right now is really split on it. That there was a growing segment within MoveOn that wanted to see the war in Afghanistan ended, and that there was also still a group of people within MoveOn who thought that the Taliban should not be allowed to come back into power, and that was worth staying there. So I actually haven't seen a lot of talk about progressives, what needs to be done there, because Iraq is kind of solving itself. But I think
I wouldn't quite go that far.
But well, I mean, definitely. I mean, as far as like the panel discussions, there was not a lot about just look at the number of panels. There wasn't a lot about we need to get the troops out of Iraq now. Wasn't a major issue. The other one, there was kind of lots of momentary, but I don't think that was kind of just the bigger focus. I would say there were three ones.
Biggest focus I feel I've seen here is the green collar jobs. I feel that's been the dominant. As far as you're talking about big ideas,
right?
Like the right has been saying that the left has no ideas. That has really become a signature liberal progressive idea,
right?
And in part because, or maybe not in part, maybe totally, because it hits upon several areas. It hits upon environmental issues with global warming. It hits upon economic issues and creating jobs. It hits upon national security issues with dependence on oil and having to have some very awkward relationships with unpleasant governments.
Right. I mean, I just wouldn't characterize it as a new idea. I mean, central planning's been around since the 40s, and the green-collar jobs is just a slightly different branded way of saying the Work Progress Administration, which is exactly how some people here are trying to sell it.
Well, there was a panel discussion called the Next New Deal.
There was another panel discussion called Bring Back the WPA.
Well, I mean, if you want to get to that level, what's it? Bare naked ladies. It's all been done. We have two basic ideas here from the left and the right. Belief in active, responsive government and belief that government always gets in the way. It all comes back to that. But there are wrinkles that you put on those basic ideas, and the notion that it's not a fight between the environment and the economy, but there are ideas that actually help the environment and the economy. That's relatively new, at least a relatively new way of presenting it. That's catching on.
So let me just get to name the three, and then we can get back to green collar, because that is big. But the three would be, I would say, green collar, which is kind of an umbrella for a whole bunch of other ideas, healthcare, and card check, which
card check is big.
Yes, card check is big, and so
I probably should add card check to my CAF list.
Well, see, you haven't been taking good notes like I have this week. So these are the big three, and green collar jobs and card check are definitely related. I was struck probably most by a relatively small panel, which had. What's her name from the Apollo the Apollo Alliance, Kate Gore, and the co-director of the Apollo Alliance, and she was talking about how from the beginning they were really trying to bring in as many progressive left-wing organizations as possible, and they've actually been around trying to make the green-collar jobs argument from way back in 2002, 2003, and they're trying to make the case to Kerry to go along those lines. And so they've recognized early on that trying to sell global warming legislation couldn't be about, stopping carbon and the rest of it. It had to be part of a much larger pitch about economic security. And she said they're the ones that came up with green-collar jobs. And I'll take her word for it. So, and it's definitely something that we as conservatives, on blogs and internally at Heritage have said, this is an idea, a label that we need to nip in the butt, and explain why it is just so wrong. But essentially, it asks for both a price on carbon. It's agnostic as to whether it's cap and trade or carbon tax. But more importantly, what they want to do is invest. And it was smaller. I think it was $300 billion when they first made the offer in 2004. Now they want $500 billion over 10 years, so $50 billion a year spent on a new green economy. And so this is where the green-collar jobs come in. Is that basically they want the federal government to play in the economy, to spend $50 billion a year on.
Part of this is to also help unleash a lot of private capital and venture capital.
There's nothing holding it back now.
Well, that's not true. In fact, everyone in the wind and solar industry says if we don't have these production tax credits, all these startups are going to fold.
The production credits are in the Republican plan. The
one they know is never going to get passed because it has
the one that I know that's never going to get a vote.
When the actual tax credits have been on the floor, conservatives have filibustered them every single time.
That's because they're generally attached to stuff that even Paul Krugman says is ridiculous, like releasing oil as future petroleum reserve or windfall oil profits taxes.
There are fair debates to have about that, but you're telling me if you really believed in clean energy, you would let that be the obstacle you're going to get done?
Well, as the panelists were saying the other day, there's definitely a strong consensus in the Senate for these energy tax credits, and there's a reason they haven't got done, and the reason is not because GOP doesn't want to sign on to them. There's just a whole bunch of other stuff that, because of the gas price issue, Nancy has attached a whole bunch of other crap that stuff that even New York Times and Paul Krugman says is crap.
When Republicans and conservatives controlled the Congress from 2001 to 2006, what are they doing with energy?
Oh, well, they passed some of those tax credits, not as much as the Democrats asked for. But the Democrats have been there for 2 years now, and they haven't made them permanent yet.
They need to be made long-term or permanent, so there's some market certainty to get that venture capital coming in. When it's done year by year, it's too tenuous to unleash the private capital.
All I'm saying is that a deal could definitely be struck for dealing with drilling on the one hand and the tax credits on the other.
There seems to be that deal on the table now.
No, it's not.
The Gang of 10.
No, it's not. Which is actually the Gang of 16.
Like that deal for some reason.
Which is actually the Gang of 16 because there's no new drilling in the Gang of 16 thing. But we covered that before. Sidetrack me from my original point about green collar jobs is that it's tied into and if you get their literature, it's all about made in America, and there's a strong labor component to it. Is that they want all of this stuff, and they're vague on it now, but they want all the stuff to be made in America, and the other side to this is that, of course, they want card check, which takes away the secret ballot in in elections for organizing labor unions.
Unions would characterize it slightly differently than that.
How would they characterize it?
Well, right now, a secret ballot sort of implies that it's this totally personal, private decision. No one's interfering with you. When in fact, when these union elections do happen, management gets extremely involved and can be very meddlesome.
It's a campaign. They try to inform people.
You actually can decertify a union via card check right now. So this is actually allowing card check to be implemented on both sides of the equation, not just one. And so to have a card check is not a public process. It's you and your card. It's not like I have to go into a public space like a caucus and check my card. I can check my card whatever I feel like.
Yeah, but if the labor organizers, lieutenants, can pressure you. They can go to your home and ask you to sign. They can go to your car in the parking lot, ask you to sign. They can corner you in the workstation and ask you to sign. And so that's what about it is public, is that the organizers, because they're going to be good vote counters, just like everyone else in politics, they know who has and hasn't signed. And if you haven't signed, you're going to get some pressure at home, at your car, everywhere. And that's just atrocious. I can't even believe you're signing up for that.
But pressure from management in the middle of the election to happen. There's not a lot of evidence of untoward union pressure. There is evidence of management pressure.
Whoa. Have you been paying attention at all to this huge scandal from the largest growing SEIU chapter in Los Angeles? I forget his name, Freeman, who's been busted for all this corruption and fraud, and about how his lieutenants have been pressuring people to sign loyalty oaths for him? You're not following this story at all?
I'm not familiar with the story.
Oh, well, we'll definitely post to that link.
So you have an isolated example. I don't really know all the facts for it. It's not, and I might add, there have been many times you've thrown stories at me where I've gone back and looked and found other aspects of the story that I did not know about. But let's taking it for your word. I'm sure you're going to find isolated examples of things. But harassment is always wrong. Pressure is always wrong. I'm sure anything.
And that's why we need a secret ballot where people can go in and vote
what we have
their
right
conscience
now,
in secret.
Well, what we have right now is not a sanctified system where everyone is acting without pressure, because management is actively pressuring people.
Just like the McCain and Obama campaigns pressure voters before they go into a ballot box. I'm not saying business doesn't say anything. They definitely try to educate their workers and get their case out there. And I'm not going to say they're always.
It often goes far beyond that.
I mean, like what? The protection that the secret ballot offers is the protection there. Is that the company can't have a system of counting votes and saying that this person has voted with us, this person has voted with us.
Decertify a union via card check.
When was the last time a union was decertified during card check?
I don't know. But I know it can't be done.
When was the last time it happened? Does it ever happen?
I'm not aware. I just know it is legally allowable right now, which makes
it does not happen.
Well, that makes my point then, because if it can happen, if right now having a card check theoretically allows the possibility of all this pressure to occur that would create something that the unions would not want. But it doesn't actually happen in practice. Why would you then presume it's going to happen on the front end?
I think the fact, and I'm not 100% sure they never happen, but they are very rare.
And I'm sure you can pass a law where actual
rare,
harassment would still be illegal, by the way.
Yeah, the harassment's illegal, but it's very hard to prosecute those cases. And it's
so easy to prosecute cases against management right now because the National Labor Relations Board is so fair.
They prosecute cases all the time. And actually, if you look at one of the first things the Democrats did when they took office is they cut funding for the Department of Labor division that investigates and tracks labor fraud and labor violations by unions. There's actually a great database that the Department of Labor has committed, which takes the public reports that labor unions must file about how they spend their money and has made that available online. And Democrats have tried to shut that open database down, even though they say they're all about openness. And they cut funding for that department. They do not want any oversight or openness into what unions do. And that is just so hypocritical for their progressive openness message.
Well, I will not take your characterization of the situation at face value.
I'll provide the links.
I'm sure your links are all on the internet. But I do agree with you that openness and transparency is a progressive value, and the union movement has come a very long way on that front.
Yeah, we're just going to go ahead and disagree there.
Okay. But you were making another point where we got sidetracked on the specifics of the Employee Free Choice Act.
Yes. Just that they're trying to have an alliance between labor and the environmental unions, and green collar jobs is the nexus of that.
Yep.
And you saw it a little bit in the Lieberman-Warner debate, but not a lot. And when you look at what Barack Obama economic plan so far looks like, that New York Times magazine was great at illustrating what that was. Is that he basically talked about something along these lines about he's proposing major infrastructure spending for this new green economy, and I think you're going to see that or healthcare be his first focus when he gets into office, is this massive new infrastructure spending that, of course, will all be Davis-Bacon and have all the labor quotas and the rest of it. That
well, actually,
all us conservatives.
We would argue that the amount of money that Obama's proposed on infrastructure spending pales in comparison to what the need is.
Well, that's your job.
Yeah. But he's talking, I think, $15 billion over 10 years for a national infrastructure bank, which in Stacey outline is a good idea. That's $1.5 billion a year. There are a huge amount of infrastructure problems as far as things that are falling apart right now. Roads and bridges and the like. Not to mention the infrastructure modernization that we need: clean energy, smart grid, high-speed rail, more broadband, etc. There's definitely, so I only would quibble with your characterization of what he's proposing is massive. The problem is massive. I'm not sure what he's proposed is quite up to that task, although I would argue at least is in the right direction.
Well, all I'm predicting is that I would say either healthcare or this new green-collar massive infrastructure tied into a larger cap-and-trade program. I think all those debates are going to happen at the same time. Is that his infrastructure spending and all that is going to be part and parcel with any other cap-and-trade legislation you see, and that I predict is what he's going to move on first, because that's going to be his main economic driver and focus. He really does believe that whole cap-and-trade green plan is what is going to be his economic saving.
If he can get cap-and-trade done quickly, which would be huge. That is a massive undertaking.
I don't think he's going to get it done without the infrastructure spending, without the green dollar.
Well, the way he frames the argument, which is a smart way to frame it. If you are doing cap and trade with 100% auction, you are auctioning off all the pollution permits, so oil company has to.
The 100% auction is not going to happen, because at that point it's
a critical part of it.
It's pretty much a carbon tax.
It's a critical part of that plan, and Obama has characterized it as such. That is raising the revenue you need to not only help mitigate any short-term price increases of energy that you can give straight-up rebates to consumers, but also have money to invest in clean energy infrastructure and create jobs. So the two things are intrinsically linked. If you detach them, if you say, okay, we're not going to sell the permits, companies, you get freebies, you're losing a very significant revenue stream. So he is beginning to frame the issue in a practical way. We'll see what happens. Push comes to shove. But it's a critical question, though, because assuming Obama wins, there's going to be that debate: how far, how fast do you go, how quickly? Do you go incrementally first? Do you go big first? And there's what Rick Perlstein talked about on our series. Actually, there's an article in the American Prospect that we excerpted on offfuture.org, the liberal shock doctrine, that essentially FDR and LBJ got so much done so fast that the conservatives didn't know what hit them and couldn't regroup in time to stop it. Carter tried to do something similar and got throttled. Clinton arguably didn't even go that big at first. So we tried to go big on healthcare and got throttled, and that kind of stalled his momentum. So if he is to go big, and you can interconnect those issues, that's probably a very smart way to go big. And we'll see if this progressive mobilization happening outside the hall here continues throughout the fall to make it easier for whoever gets elected to go big come January.
I just have one small policy point, which is there's no real theoretical difference between a carbon tax and a cap-and-trade plan. And when you give away the credits, that's not a whole lot different than having allowances. All that happens when you force an auction of the credits is that it essentially is a higher carbon tax.
Well, that's accurate.
Right. So basically all we're talking about is...
It's putting a price on carbon.
Right.
We say putting a price on carbon, that's what that is.
Cap and trade, by giving away the permits, puts a price on carbon. Cap and trade, by auctioning off the permits, puts a price on carbon. It's just that by auctioning the permits, you're putting a much higher price on carbon. That's the only distinction between the two. And
conservatives like to say you're raising taxes as if everyone's going to pay a higher tax, but you're putting a tax, you're putting a price on the carbon production, the burning of the carbon. And if you're channeling that revenue into other forms of alternative energy, it's not going to amount to a tax increase on the consumer because they're going to have other options besides oil and coal and whatnot to get their energy sources.
No.
This is where we disagree, I
1% of the energy in this country comes from alternative sources.
Oh, why do you keep saying this talking point?
Because it's true.
You make my head hurt. It's not. Yes, it's true today.
Yeah.
The whole point is so it is not true tomorrow. That's the whole point.
But you would implement the law now so that for the next, let's say things go really well. For the next 4 years or so, you still have the American consumer paying carbon taxes on all the energy they consume.
Stream, as I said, into rebates to consumers to mitigate short-term price increases while you increase the amount of
everybody is still paying the tax. Now, after you tax everyone...
No, not everybody. The carbon producers pay the tax. You take some of that revenue...
Every American in this country consumes lots of energy that comes from carbon.
Yes.
If you're going to tax carbon, you're going to raise the taxes on every American.
If you give the money back to the consumer.
Right. Well, you're still taxing them. You're then, redistributing the taxes later. But you're still taxing them up front. Just because you're distributing the gains later... If the government takes money from a bunch of people to give it to a bunch of other people, you're still taxing everybody before you redistribute it.
Okay. I know you're not a stupid person.
Yes.
The tax.
Yes.
I mean, I'm going to call it a tax, make you happy.
Okay, how we'll go through this.
The tax is not levied on the consumer. It is not. It is levied on the carbon producer. That is just
the consumer,
fact in a carbon... Now, if you want to argue...
The consumer ends up paying that tax.
If you want to argue that it indirectly pays in the end, please go right ahead.
That's what I'm arguing.
But it's not a direct tax on them. And
it's not a direct tax. I never said it was a direct tax.
Okay.
Cap and trade is not a direct tax. It's a very indirect, backwards... That's why it's somewhat more possible than a carbon tax. It's because cap and trade is a carbon tax, but people try to sell cap and trade because it's very indirect. But in reality, what it is a tax that will be immediately passed on to consumers. Every economist knows this.
Except for the fact that you could structure it in a way that some of the revenue gained from the carbon producers goes back in consumers.
I'm not disputing that. Once you tax everybody, then the government can redistribute it as you see fit. I mean, that's part of the plan, but you're still taxing everybody.
Are we going to talk about something else?
No, I think we're done.
Okay. Well, it has been enjoyable spending this convention with you.
It has. You are not going on to St. Paul.
I'm not going. I'm a little sad about that.
And I think actually I'm going to be going with Armando next week from or Big Tent Democrat, whatever he wants to call himself.
I'll be curious to hear what he has to say about the convention, knowing he was never much of an Obama fan.
Well, we'll probably be talking about how evil the Republicans are. But I'll try to ask him about Obama too.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right.
Talk to you later, Bill.
All right.